This is Pulse 95.
Pulse 95.
It's the Morning Majlis. Talking the stories that are shaping headlines, plus those that make you go,
Good morning, Sharjah and the United Arab Emirates. A brand new day, it is a brand new week, and a number of you might be returning back to work as well, and looking forward to a fantastic start of the week as a number of key initiatives have been announced in Sharjah and across the United Arab Emirates, and we will be keeping you posted, informed and entertained. And most people go through the Sunday blues, and the Morning Majlis is here to keep you entertained throughout this time so that you don't have them. But a very good morning to Rania, as we will be talking a lot about Sharjah.
Good morning, Abdul Karim, and good morning to all the listeners of the show. I hope you had a great weekend, and we're looking forward to a great week as well. Well, as many facilities have reopened here in the nation, in our Emirates, Sharjah has decided to extend its suspension of many events to curb the spread of the COVID-19. So we will share with you the time span of these suspensions, and also what facilities it includes exactly, and what are the measures that go along with it. But on the other hand, Sharjah has reopened many of its facilities. We also talked about that closely here on the Morning Majlis, including its leisure destinations, for example, Al-Qasba, Noor Island, and Majlis, and much more. So it's worth mentioning that later on in the show, we will be talking closely about the first weekend of reopening Sharjah attractions. We will talk to Al-Qasba spokesperson about how the public's experience have been so far, and that conversation will be just right after 9 o'clock, so stay with us.
It will be after 9 o'clock, of course. That is one important thing, discussing the future of events over here, as well as what the plans are for Al-Qasba. And we will be keeping you posted throughout the day with all the big international developments, particularly when it comes to deals and no deals. Because in Africa, we've got a very, very important announcement to be discussing. Stay with us on the Morning Majlis. We shall be returning right after some musical entertainment, and we'll keep you posted throughout the show. This is the Morning Majlis, only on Pulse 95.
Pulse 95. Between local lines, notes from the Emirate.
Yes, notes from Sharjah. Welcome back onto the show. Well, many facilities and leisure destinations have definitely reopened in Sharjah, and we've definitely been enjoying ourselves as of late. But a lot of things have been suspended, like events and public gatherings, and that will be extended to curb the spread of COVID-19. And this decision comes into effect starting from July 1st until the end of July. And that comes in line with the directives of His Highness Sheikh Sultan bin Mohammed bin Sultan Al Qasimi, Crown Prince and Deputy Ruler of Sharjah and Chairman of the Sharjah Executive Council. And His Highness issued a decision to extend the suspension of all social events, celebrations held in wedding halls, event halls, hotels, and also government and community facilities. And as I said, until the end of July.
Yeah, the decision was originally enacted in March 14th and was subject to extensions, which is what happened here. And the current extension of suspension of mass events and celebrations in Sharjah, there's a possibility of further extension to that, depending on the situation with the coronavirus and, of course, the Sharjah government's willingness to protect the safety of the public. To clarify, the ban covers all social events, any mass events whatsoever as well, in order to limit the coronavirus outbreak.
Yep, and it remains in place until the end of July, so it will be very interesting to see how far it is going to be re-extended, should there be plans of re-extending it. And we will be talking about at the federal level right after this in terms of what's been discussed, because fines are still in place for arranging gatherings and even attending private or public events which tend to have a high turnout. But we'll also be talking later on in the show to a friend of the show, Saviola De Mello. She is from Al-Qasba, and she's spoken to us before in terms of events being organized at the Flag Island. But at Al-Qasba Canal, we are going to be seeing, we'll be hearing from them in terms of how things were in the first weekend of eased restrictions, and we'll also be talking about how the plans are for those events, because that part of the town is used to street entertainers and lots of other entertainment musicians as well, entertaining the audience. But so far, it seems such an event is not going to happen until the end of July. Well, stay with us on the Morning Majlis. Lots to get through and lots to look forward to as well. And we'll keep you posted throughout the show. And if you've got any questions, anything to add, then do get involved on the text lines 4215.
The Morning Majlis, talking the stories that are shaping headlines. This is Pulse 95.
Hi everyone, good morning and welcome back to the Morning Majlis as we cover the UAE government's media briefing on COVID-19. It's got some information here on fines and administrative penalties against violators of precautionary measures here in the country. For starters, the UAE government spoke on the number of tests conducted. They said that since the last briefing, they've conducted more than 52,000 additional COVID-19 tests among both UAE citizens and residents. They said this resulted in the detection of 378 new cases, pushing the total number of infections in the country to over 47,360 as well. That's according to the official spokesperson of the UAE government, Amna Dahak Shamsi, and Salam Zabi, the acting director of the Federal Emergency Crisis and Disasters and Prosecution as well. They provided further updates on the state of COVID-19 in the country, as well as the actions taken by the UAE government against potential violators.
Yes, a statement coming out from Al-Shamsi saying that with the gradual return to normalcy, the responsibility is now even more on UAE citizens and residents to comply with the instructions and measures aimed at ensuring the continued success of all the efforts made. The UAE's wise leadership, of course, continues to provide the necessary means to combat COVID-19. She also noted an additional 365 individuals have fully recovered from COVID-19. That's bringing the total number of recoveries to more than 35,834, thankfully, with a total of 11,215 individuals still being treated with active. So that therefore 11,000 cases still active, most of whom are in stable condition, thankfully.
Yep, very important updates yesterday, and good to see that after conducting over 52,000 tests, we found 378 cases or new cases being registered. But the idea, and in line with what we have, is the in Sharjah how we've suspended events until the end of July. Similarly, at the federal level, they've told everyone, saying, we've actually seen more violations now. As opposed to during the national sterilization program. It's because people are having these gatherings in public or private places, even in their own homes, farms, and also estates, and that remains to be prohibited. They said family visits should only be confined or limited to first-degree relatives, practice social distancing, and also especially for elderly people and those suffering with chronic diseases, and that also includes diabetes. And it is very, very important. But the other thing that they talked about was also downloading the Trace COVID app. That was a new development as well.
Certainly is, and they emphasized the fact that in order to effectively curb the spread of the disease in the country, we must all do our part and be responsible individuals and enroll in the Al Husn app in order to ensure that the disease is thoroughly tracked and those infected would not spread it to more people as well. Those possibly infected would also be notified through Al Husn app. So that was a big part of what they discussed with the public as well. And they also, within that speech, really stressed the importance of following the guidelines given by the UAE government. They said they are for people's safety. Going back to correct myself, the app is called Trace COVID, and they said that failing to abide by those rules would result in legal actions and fines. They said, in fact, that the fine would be doubled for those repeating any violations, and in fact, third-time offenders would be subject to legal action and could face imprisonment for a period of up to 6 months and an increased fine of 100,000 dirham as well.
That's a pretty steep fine to be incurring. Well, stay with us in the morning Majlis. We've got the business news headlines lined up for you, and we shall be returning right after that with plenty of more points to discuss, especially a humanitarian gesture by Sharjah police. That will be discussed later on in the programme, so stay tuned, and the morning Majlis will be right back.
The Morning Majlis, talking the stories that are shaping headlines. This is Pulse 95.
This is Pulse 95, and a very good morning and welcome back onto the programme. Now, big development that we've seen in terms of easing of restrictions across the globe and mosques reopening in Muslim countries as well. Egypt is one country that was quite badly affected by coronavirus. Now, they are easing restrictions, which is a really good thing and a welcome sight. And what's happening?
Yes, they announced this actually yesterday, that they're lifting many restrictions put in place against the coronavirus pandemic, of course. So they're reopening cafes, a lot of gyms, of course, and theaters after more than 3 months of closure, despite a continued upward trend in new infections that they have over there. But authorities also allowed the reopening of mosques and also churches, and also they lifted the nighttime curfew.
Certainly, now that the nighttime curfew has ended, we've seen the opening of restaurants, cafes, cinemas, and sporting clubs in the country of Egypt. And Egypt is the Arab world's most populous country. And at the moment, it has reported just under 64,000 cases of COVID-19. To elaborate some more on the reopening of mosques and churches in the country, weekly mass prayers, including Friday prayers, will remain suspended in the country. Looking at public transportation, it will be allowed to run from 4 a.m. until midnight, while shops will be asked to close by 9 p.m. and eateries by 10 p.m. as well. Beaches and parks will also remain shut in the country.
Well, very good news to see that things are improving. And Cairo, which is a bustling metropolis of 20 million people, with their coffee shops and restaurants opening. And it is good to see that they are not going to be reopening any of those famous shisha parlors that they're very, very well known for.
Which is very good for public health.
Exactly. And we are having weekly main services, and they will not be allowed in mosques and churches. So the government still holds the ban on Fridays, Friday prayers in the mosques and Sunday masses at the churches. But wearing face masks continues to be implemented and enforced. But it's great to see a country that really needs to restart its economic engines anyway, because they've been in a bit of a debt situation with the IMF.
Certainly, because the International Monetary Fund recently approved another $5.2 billion loan for Egypt, which is going to be added to the $2.8 billion fund that had already been promised to help stave off the pandemic's horrible economic effects on the country. And before the start of COVID-19, Egypt had just emerged from a 3-year economic reform program that came with securing a $12 billion IMF loan back in the year 2016. So despite the mounting criticism that Egypt is not yet ready to open up its economy due to the rising number of cases in the country, its economy has been overwhelmed. But there has been that heated debate as medical experts in the country are warning that despite the fact that this could reinvigorate the economy, the healthcare system is not well handled for this, and that we could be heading towards a catastrophe.
Well, a bit of a question mark over that as well, isn't it? Now, what we do know is 3 million casual laborers, as they like to define it as. So the part-time workers, those on wages, 3 million of them went out of work. And before that, 1 in 3 Egyptians were already living in poverty. That's according to the government figures. And in terms of the number of cases, over the weekend they said that they've recorded over 2,600 deaths, over 62,000 infections, which is, and the death toll is the highest in this region. But like elsewhere across the world, they're thought to be far higher due to a number of reasons, including limited testing as well. The actual numbers of deaths and infections is expected to be far higher due to those limitations. But it's a little bit of welcome news, as the Egyptian national carrier is now planning on resuming its non-stop flights to 29 international destinations. In terms of precautions on the plane and at the airport is going to be very interesting to see. Well, stay with us on the Morning Majlis. There's lots to get through. Up next, we will be talking about the humanitarian gesture of Sharjah Police, because they came to the rescue of just under 300 people who were in desperate need. All this will be discussed right here on the Morning Majlis.
Pulse 95. Between local lines. Notes from the Emirate. Pulse 95.
Hi everybody, good morning and welcome back to the Morning Majlis. And we have a pretty great gesture from Sharjah Police, as Major General Saif Az-Zari Shamsi, Commander-in-Chief of Sharjah Police, directed his agency to provide adequate housing and accommodate over 280 Indian workers after they lost their jobs in different companies. And this action was taken after a note was received by Sharjah Police via the Direct Line Al-Khatt Al-Mubashir radio program, stating that there was a group of workers residing in a building under construction in one of the Emirates' industrial areas during the peak of the summer. Essentially, a number of people have been made homeless following their departure from their companies. And the Major General indicated that the competent authorities of Sharjah Police were immediately instructed to provide adequate housing for those workers in Sharjah Police Academy and other centers as well.
Yes, and Major General Al-Shamsi also instructed that the workers should be provided all means of a decent life for them, taking into account the guarantee of their stay in a healthy manner, consistent with the precautionary and health measures taken by the UAE and also Sharjah due to the coronavirus. He also praised the efforts made by the Sharjah Charity Association and its speedy response to help in such humanitarian situations, and also work to provide the necessary support to face such emergencies.
Yeah, but it's really good to see how the police acted upon the message that was received
Swiftly.
Very swiftly as well.
Yeah.
And it just goes to show how connected the Sharjah government is with the media sector, and also in terms of alleviating any concerns of the general public whenever they highlight them. And it is a massive, very, very important gesture by the police indeed, because it was over 280 people, and they were in the industrial area, waiting under the summer sun, waiting to go back home, because at the moment we're seeing repatriation efforts done by the diplomatic missions of India, Pakistan and other South Asian missions as well. They're very overwhelmed because of the amounts of people that live here, and sadly a number of them had to be losing their jobs, and once they've lost their jobs, still waiting for the approvals to fly back home, they are left waiting with limited support. And for Sharjah Police to realise that and stand by them in solidarity with their situation, a very, very important gesture, particularly to house them in police academies, which are at the moment have probably gone through their own graduation of their batches, so things are improving and there's more facilities available to make good use and a very humanitarian use of that. So congratulations and a big thank you to the team at Sharjah Police for their gesture. Well, we will be continuing the discussions here on the Morning Majlis. We'll take a bit of a breather. We'll shift the focus globally. We'll look at international developments right after the news headlines. So stay tuned, stay connected with Pulse 95.
The Morning Majlis, talking the stories that are shaping headlines. This is Pulse 95.
Hi everybody, good morning and welcome back to the Morning Majlis, the show where we talk about stories shaping the headlines. It's me, Ahmed Dawood, with Abdul Karim Hanif and Rania Saadi, and we have a lot to get to this morning, including big deals inked between countries and a number of major business developments. We'll be talking about a raging debate here with regards to Facebook, as Mark Zuckerberg's wealth has plunged by $7 billion. And this coincides with a movement by companies to boycott Facebook ads. So why are companies doing this? Why is Facebook losing money? And what does Facebook plan to do about this? Why is this so controversial? And why is Zuckerberg drawing the ire of those within his company and those from outside, left and right? Stay tuned as we discuss that story and so much more.
Yes, and also in other news, in order to diffuse tensions, 3 major nations in Africa actually have agreed to resume negotiations over the operation filling of a massive dam being built. So those negotiations will be reached within 2 weeks to resolve all outstanding issues. So we will definitely talk about that later on in the show. But while countries are strengthening and building up their ties, another country in the Arab region, well, its economy has been in the limelight for its deteriorating economic state, and that is Lebanon. And it has been in hot water as well with the IMF, as the nation has accumulated a lot of monetary losses. So we'll talk about that also into details.
We shall be talking about that in greater detail, and we will be delving into a number of key stories and highlights to be discussing here on the program. But we would like to throw a little bit of this.
This is the Majlis quiz.
This is the Majlis quiz.
Pulse 95.
Today's big story that we will be talking about later on in the program, and all you have to do is to get involved in on the quiz or with the quiz. Text lines are open 4215 if you know the answer. Who won the Bundesliga, Rania?
The what?
The Bundesliga.
What is that?
A German football league. Ahmed Awad, do we know who won Bundesliga?
When it comes to the Bundesliga, I quite frankly know only one team.
Yeah.
And I have a strong feeling that it's that one team that I know of, which is why I will remain silent on this matter.
No, you can answer it.
Bayern?
Bayern Munich?
Yes.
Okay, very good.
Bayern Munich.
Yeah, so they won the team.
Oh, they did?
Yeah, so they won the Bundesliga. So my question is to all our listeners, what does Bayern mean? If you know the answer, then you could stand a chance to get a high five from us, but no longer high five, elbow taps, and a virtual elbow tap. So text lines are open 4215 if you know the answer to what does Bayern and Bayern Munich mean. It could mean United, it could mean Bayern, Munich Forest, you never know. What does Bayern stand for, or does it mean in German, in fact, for the Bundesliga side? If you know the answers, text lines are open 4215. We'll give you a shout out live on the air, and we shall be right back after a bit of a short interval.
The Morning Majlis, Pulse 95.
Yes, you may join the conversation throughout the show by texting us at 4215. Make this your Majlis this morning as we discuss the big stories. And we've got here a new development in what has been described as a major dispute between Egypt, Ethiopia, and Sudan. And this regards the Nile Dam. So looking at the latest development here, the 3 countries have agreed to resume negotiations over the operation and filling of a massive Nile Dam that is being built by Addis Ababa, Ethiopia, following a video conference summit. The summit had the leaders of the 3 nations discussing the situation, and negotiators were given 2 weeks to reach a legally binding agreement that resolves all outstanding issues, like how to handle sustained drought and settle future disputes as well. But this matter is set to be contentious, as even the latest statements from the countries don't show much signs for progress.
Yes, and continuing to what you just said, Ahmed, this decision is really basically to diffuse tensions that have steadily built up between the 3 nations since the collapse of the latest round of talks earlier this month. With media and officials in Addis Ababa and Cairo speaking of a fast deteriorating crisis that could lead to hostilities between the nations. But the latest round of negotiations ended with Ethiopia and Egypt blaming each other for their failure in a fast escalating war of words. Egypt, which fears the dam would reduce its vital share of the river's waters, said at the time that Ethiopia did not want a legally binding deal, and that it also rejected a binding process to settle future disputes or even to agree to effective measures to deal with future spells of drought. Now, for its part, Ethiopia said Egypt was clinging to outdated colonial era deals that gave it the lion's share of the Nile's water without heed or care for the interests of the other 10 river basin countries.
Yep, and this matter has been going on for a number of years. It started way back in 2011 when this dam worth $4.5 billion or construction for that started to begin. And now the seriousness is that if this matter is not resolved, it could lead to a conflict. And that is what a military conflict as well. And that's what a lot of people or commentators are looking at. Now, for those of you who are not so aware of the world of geography of the Nile, we know it's the world's longest river, but we've always associated people who are not from the African origin or haven't or not well acquainted with that part of the world. Nile River stretches from the top of Egypt all the way down to middle of Africa to an extent, or middle of East Africa, all the way down to Uganda. And now this dam is being built in Ethiopia, Blue Nile. What Ethiopia believes is that it's a sovereign right for it to build its own dam. And we are also seeing that they say that it is set to generate a lot of electricity for their country. And they say that they want to start filling it by now, the dam. But Egypt has not been very, very pleased about it, saying that it should be between 10 and 21 years for their water is not drastically reduced because it relies 90% on the river or water sources from the River Nile.
Yeah, absolutely. And in fact, Egypt's President Fattah al-Sisi even stated that this is an existential issue, that this place where the dam is being built, that's the country's share of the Nile waters, and that is being threatened. And in fact, they recently urged the UN Security Council to intervene and said that what Ethiopia is doing is taking a non-positive stance as well. But Ethiopia is saying the dam is 70% complete and would be very important for the country, and that's where the dispute lies.
Definitely, it lies there. Sudan, being in the middle of the action, is also one of the states that is going to have its say. So it's a three-way discussion so far as the deal has now been brokered, because the talk about a deal or a draft deal started, in fact, way back in January. And now we're into halfway through 2020. We're seeing that there is some development and some progress there, as most countries are now sitting down and discussing it. In Sudan is also trying to broker that deal as the river continues to flow through the deserts of the northern Sudanese territory into Egypt and all the way to the Mediterranean, and how important is this river. But one thing is for sure, it is all about nationalistic pride and is all about preserving national interests. And we're hoping that they do come to a swift resolution and avoid any form of military conflict. So in line with that, and also paying tribute to the wonderful culture of that part of the world, here's a little bit of musical entertainment that is all about waving that flag, because it's about football as well. We're going to be talking about that. We're asking you.
It's about Africa.
And it's about Africa. We're asking you this question. If you know the answers, what team, for Bayern Munich winning the Bundesliga, what does Bayern mean in German? And if you know the answer, text lines are open 4215. But in line with the African discussion, it is time to wave that flag.
The Morning Majlis, Pulse 95.
Oh, hello. Welcome back onto the Morning Majlis. We are looking at the big developments shaping the headlines across the globe, certainly. We are looking at Zuckerberg's wealth plunging, Facebook in all sorts of hot water, Mr. Ahmed Dawood.
Certainly is, and this has happened after a number of companies have pulled advertising from Facebook. It began with the launch of the Stop Hate for Profit campaign launched by a number of socially conscious, corporations like the North Face and Patagonia. And this occurred, in essence, after Facebook decided not to take any action on a series of controversial Trump posts, including one saying that racial justice protests said that looting would lead to shooting. So they've been facing that pushback from companies, from their own employees as well. This is particularly significant as nearly all of Facebook's roughly $70 billion in annual revenue last year came from advertising dollars. So experts examining the situation, however, say Facebook is less susceptible to this kind of pressure than most businesses due to the fact that it's led by a single person, a CEO, Mark Zuckerberg, who exercises complete voting control over the company and cannot be removed by shareholders, unlike a company like Disney or Apple that is run by a committee as well. Facebook responding by striking a defiant tone, saying we do not make policy changes tied to revenue pressure as well. And another element to this is the fact that we cannot strictly attribute the dip in profits for Facebook, in its shares, and in Zuckerberg's lost wealth strictly to this boycott. In fact, the only companies in the top 100 of Facebook advertisers that are involved are 3 that are part of this boycott so far. They say coronavirus itself has had an overall impact on dips in advertising numbers.
Certainly have, and we will be keeping you posted about that because Twitter's shares also tumbled over the weekend following the Unilever's announcement as well, and especially with major companies pausing all paid advertising on social media platforms. So it is always a bit of a situation for social media giants indeed. Well, time now for us to celebrate all things sports, because that is what is up next. Courtesy of Emmanuel Majali, this is a little bit of a sports recap for you, live on the airwaves of Pulse 95.
The Morning Majlis, Pulse 95.
Hello and welcome back onto the Morning Majlis. Well, as many facilities have reopened, a lot of stores, a lot of companies, or a few of them, have decided to make it permanent. And one company in particular, that is Microsoft, after temporarily closing its Microsoft stores in March due to the pandemic, the company has decided to make it permanent. That is in the decision to shut or close its 83 Microsoft Store retail locations. And the decision came actually on Friday, and that move will result in a pre-tax charge of approximately $450 million, which includes primarily asset write-offs and impairments.
That's right, Rania. And this decision, of course, comes amid the COVID-19 pandemic, and as Microsoft weighs the current situation as well as a post-COVID-19 situation. Their spokespeople stated that this would be the move for the company. Microsoft also said its retail team members will help on the website instead of in-store, and that all employees who had worked at the store will have an opportunity to stay with the company. It's pretty interesting what Microsoft had been trying to do with these retail stores in the past decade or so. And what this brings to mind is the Apple Store. In fact, Microsoft was intending on providing customers with an experience similar to the Apple Store, where people could go in and try new Microsoft programs and hardware that is created by both Microsoft and its partners. They even built a store in New York City on 5th Avenue, which is just blocks away from Apple's iconic glass cube store. However, before COVID-19 began, Apple stores were crowded and Microsoft stores just weren't getting many customers. And this COVID-19 situation might just be the final nail in the coffin for Microsoft's retail presence.
Yes, it is. And it's all about the retail presence now going down. Shares for Microsoft over the weekend were down 2%. And when we talk about this, when you hear such a story, you think, the situation's quite not very pleasant at all. But looking at these 83 stores that they had, because I've never expected Microsoft to have a store. I've never seen it myself. I've seen these Apple stores. Obviously, they've been springing up across the globe, and Apple's been obviously being that hip kind of content that everyone likes to hang around, and it's like a nice sort of...
It's a nice hangout as well.
It really
People
is.
hang out there.
People hang out there.
I've seen that. It's amazing.
Yeah, right?
Yeah. And people go over there also to catch the wonderful lighting display here in the United Arab Emirates when it comes to the fountains, the dancing fountains. But looking at their own website of where the stores were, they were mainly and primarily in the United States. The only overseas branches they had were in Australia, Canada, and the United Kingdom. I've never seen it in this part of the world at all, so that's one of the reasons when I came across this story, I was slightly concerned, saying, okay, where was this Microsoft store? But yes, obviously it was all to flex their muscle in front of Apple, especially being on the same street in New York. But this is the situation. 83 stores have now been closed.
Yes, and after this announcement, the company's retail team members will continue to serve customers from Microsoft corporate facilities and remotely. And Microsoft will also continue to invest in its digital storefronts that will not stop it. Of course, on Microsoft.com and stores in Xbox and Windows, which says reach more than 1.2 billion people every month in 190 markets. And also, Microsoft will reimagine other spaces that serve all customers, including operating Microsoft Experience Centers in London, New York, and Sydney, and also in its Redmond campus locations.
Yeah, so Microsoft never caught up to the boutique shopping experience you would have at an Apple store, but Microsoft still has big plans for us this year. In fact, the Microsoft's Xbox Series X video game console is set to launch this holiday season. And Microsoft has some other plans in store as well. The dual-screen Surface Neo device that is also set to ship during the holidays has been delayed, but apparently is still on track this year, according to spokespeople from the company.
Of course, well, so much to look forward to here on the Morning Majlis. We shall be returning after some musical entertainment, and we'll continue the key news updates for all of you. And we have a big quiz question for you, which we've been asking, and we will be asking later on in the program again for you to text in your responses. Text lines are open 4215. Our question to you was in line with the football developments and in the sporting arena. Our question to you is, Bayern Munich won the Bundesliga this year. What does Bayern stand for in Munich? Or in the team, Bayern Munich? If you know the answers, text lines are open 4215. It is a German word, but there is a translation. If you know the answer, text lines are open 4215 for you to have your say, and we shall give you a bit of a shout out. Lots of you are coming back with those responses as well, bright and early, sharper minds, and early birds get the worm, as they say. So we shall be returning right after some musical entertainment, and we'll continue the talk, especially about Lebanon and its economic situation. Stay tuned to Pulse 95.
The Morning Majlis, Pulse 95.
Yes, join the conversation with the Morning Majlis. We're back again discussing a couple of big stories shaping the headlines across the world and also over the weekend, particularly when it comes to a country very, very close to our part of the world. Well, it is in our part of the world, indeed, and it is Lebanon. What's happening over there, Rania?
Well, we've been following up closely actually on Lebanon's economic state, let's say, and it's been in hot water with the IMF. So the International Monetary Fund has warned Lebanon that its central bank has accumulated losses of as much as $49 billion as divisions between the government and the Banque de Lebanon threaten to derail vital bailout talks with the multilateral lender Financial Times, as the Financial Times reported. Now, the BDL does not publish profit and loss accounts. In recent years, it has used a complex series of sovereign debt and currency swaps with local lenders, what the central bank governor has also called financial engineering, to shore up the banking sector, also to attract foreign currency and stabilize the Lebanese pound, which is really pegged to the US dollar.
Yeah, Rania, and following talks between the IMF and Lebanon, we have a statement from the managing director of the International Monetary Fund, Kristalina Georgieva, saying she did not expect progress in the negotiations with Lebanese officials over helping Lebanon emerge out of its economic crisis. She had a bleak forecast for Lebanon. She said that while IMF officials are still working with the country, it is not clear whether it is possible for the country's leaders, active parties, and society to agree on implementing the reforms needed to stabilize the economy and boost economic growth.
We've seen how IMF is getting very, very, very much involved in this part of the world, with the loan deal also being approved for Egypt. But Lebanon has got a little bit of a focus over the years because the financial crisis now being the biggest threat to the country since the civil war of the 1970s. Lebanese pound has lost 75% of its value since October, and hopes for a quick rescue deal with the IMF has been complicated by a dispute between the government, central bank, and the losses in the banking system. But concerns are out there.
Yeah, very, very big concerns here over the possibility on whether or not you could implement deep reforms. So the general sentiment, according to economists, is that in Lebanon, the reform process at the moment is limited to simple traditional measures. But what the IMF is asking for are reforms to the public sector, to the government, and those are subject to political control. And when we're at this stalemate we're in, we can't implement these structural and sectoral reforms that could enact meaningful change and stimulate economic growth in the country. They also say that a problem with Lebanon is the sense of nepotism throughout its political system. People trying to hold on to power, to uphold their power. Some reports of corruption as well, embezzlement, and the appointment of protégés and close family members as well, compromising the country's economic recovery. So that is what the experts say stands in the way of Lebanon making those deeper, larger reforms to truly address the issues that the IMF has been pleading with the country to address.
Yep, of course, and that's also had more of a situation with their food imports being slightly more expensive now, isn't it?
That's right. There's definitely a problem as the Lebanese pound tumbled. Of course, there has been, and the crisis, of course, the currency crisis is a part of a wider economic meltdown that poses the biggest threat to the stability of the import-reliant nation since the 1975 to 1990 civil war. So now food importers were being quoted a price of $7,500 to buy dollars actually on Friday. This was stated. So they are having a problem. The central bank said liquidity was secured, but later on, actually black market volumes were actually tiny as well. And now there's a new statement saying that food imports are being reduced. It cannot continue this way. If you can't find dollars to import, you don't have any guarantee that if you ship something, you will be able to get the funds for it.
Yep, of course. And during the pandemic situation, and in March to be precise, Lebanon had defaulted on its foreign currency debt and largely attributed to critically low reserves. Well, We're hoping that the situation comes under control, and we look forward to developments in Lebanon. Time now for us to take a bit of a break, and we shall be returning right after the news headlines, courtesy of Iman Al-Majali. And if you'd like to join the discussions here on the Morning Majlis, you can do so. Text lines are open 4215. Up next, after the news, we're going to be talking about Sharjah and how Al-Qasbah, the famous touristic landmark of the Emirate, has been faring since this weekend was the first weekend following the ease of restrictions. What happens? How was the footfall? How many people went there? And if you were down at Al-Qasbah, do get involved on the text lines 4215, and later on the program I'll be sharing my experience of checking out the Khorfakan beach as well. It was all about celebration, it was all about being happy, and a bit of a breather as restrictions have eased. Stay with us, this is the Morning Majlis.
Pulse 95. Between local lines, notes from the Emirate.
Notes from the Emirate indeed, and it was the first weekend since the end of the restrictions and the eased restrictions in terms of travel and movement, and I took advantage of that and headed over to Khorfakan, to the eastern coast of the United Arab Emirates. It was a lot of fun. It was great to be out and about, outdoors as well. So we will be now talking about how Sharjah has been resuming its activities and how Sharjah is back to normal. All this will be discussed as we've got on the lines Saviola De Mello from Al-Qasbah. A very good morning to you.
Morning.
Well, great to hear from you. Now let's soak in the atmosphere of how popular it was, and how was the first weekend of being back at Al-Qasbah Canal, and what was going on.
So I think people were really excited to get back, after staying indoors for so long. So there were a lot of people that came, and kids were excited, parents were excited. A lot of teenagers come to Al-Qasbah, so they were happy as well.
Well,
and yeah, we were, really happy to have everybody back, actually.
Yeah, and Saviola, what safety measures actually are in place? Is there like a limit for number of people at Al-Qasbah, or how does that work?
So starting July, we will be having a 50% capacity of people allowed into our venue. And we have, temperature checking, face masks available at all the cafes and restaurants. And we're, maintaining social distancing. So we have checkpoints, and we have, everybody prepared and instructed. We also have, everything is being sanitized. All our restaurants, cafes, the kids' fun house, everything's being sanitized. So that's what we're doing.
Saviola, yeah, sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, that's it.
Okay, so could you talk to us about what you're doing for more vulnerable groups? There's some concern here that, for instance, children under the age of 12 or the elderly, are you doing any special measures at Al-Qasbah for those segments?
Yes, so we have, at the kids' fun house, where a lot of the kids, kids under the age of 12 go and play. So those places, they're getting, they're checking temperature. Then we're making sure that, there are a limited number of kids are permitted to come in, and we're sanitizing after everybody leaves as well. And as far as, people over the age of 60, we are letting, there are certain measures in place, but we're limiting the numbers to, very few, because it is an open destination, and people are coming in from, all sides.
Okay.
And what about the activities at Al-Qasbah? For example, the entertainment shows and the water rides at the canal, have they resumed?
We will be having them in the upcoming months, not yet. But, we're having a couple of workshops happening next month, in the month of July. So we're starting something called culinary workshops, which will be taking place at some of our cafes. And we're maintaining distance, we're keeping it to a limited number of people.
Mm-hmm. I'm guessing the culinary workshops are part of this big campaign that we're going to have over the summer. Are we correct and right in assuming that?
Yes.
Okay.
That, and also part of, they got a Cuspa summer camp that happens every year.
Mm-hmm. And so what happens during those summer camps? Is there going to be a lot of sports? Is there going to be a lot of cooking? And can wonderful people or wonderful us having wonderful kitchen skills that are not maybe not that pleasant, maybe just Instagrammable? Can we all take part in those workshops? Do you need to be an expert?
Yes, it's open to anybody above the age of 12.
Mm-hmm.
So age of 12 upward. And basically these workshops will be given by restaurants and cafe staff itself.
Mm-hmm.
So
very good.
Yeah, you're available. I mean, you can come in
and
register,
mm-hmm.
so we can save you a spot.
Brilliant. Okay, well, that's something to look forward to. But now, as a concluding remark, what is your general advice to the public who will be attending and coming over to all of these attractions in Al Shuruk and Al Qasba Canal in particular?
We're glad to have you back, and we're just going to ask you to take precautionary measures as well.
Mm-hmm.
So, make sure you have your sanitizer, your gloves, your mask, and we are also ready, with all our equipment to have you back.
Mm-hmm.
And stay safe.
Well, thank you for that. We'll look forward to returning and going back to all of the major attractions of the Emirate of Sharjah. Thank you very much for joining us, Viola, this morning.
Thank you.
And we look forward it's been a pleasure, and we look forward to welcoming you back at some point soon. Lots to celebrate and lots to look forward to in the Emirate of Sharjah, particularly when it comes to events and when it comes to places to go out, dine out, and also enjoy and soak in the wonderful summer heat, maybe you could say, some humidity, get a bit refreshed. I was very refreshed when I went to Khorfakan. It was amazing. It is a place that continues to be dear to my heart. It is my self-proclaimed hometown, birth town as well. And it was great. It was so quiet. It was nice. It was chilled. And lots to look forward to when it comes to new cafes and new areas to try. Well, stay with us on the Morning Majlis. We'll be right back after a bit of a no news, but musical entertainment. After that, we'll be talking about the bad news that we mentioned about an expensive car that
got destroyed
after 20 minutes of leaving the showroom. Well, stay with us. This is the Morning Majlis only on Pulse 95.
The Morning Majlis, talking the stories that are shaping headlines. This is Pulse 95.
This is Pulse 95 and a very good morning and welcome back onto the program. We're talking about all things related to the world of not only entertainment, but
automobiles,
but this slightly tragic news and heartbreaking news is... Because everyone loves the first car or the big car that they've invested in, and I've got the famous Morning Majlis Greenmobile, but to drive a new car and I can't complete my words.
Right. Oh, no. Well, a Lamborghini, in the UK, a Lamborghini was destroyed in a collision on a highway in the United Kingdom just 20 minutes after the car left the showroom. Now, the car is said to have been a Lamborghini Spider, which can reach up to almost $270,000, depending on the model. And the brand new Lamborghini stopped due to a mechanical failure and was then hit from behind by an innocent motorist. And this happened actually on Friday. And that is according to West Yorkshire Police Roads Policing Unit.
That's right. And this situation, looking further, the driver of the Lamborghini who was hit from behind by the van, the van's driver suffered head injuries in the collision, although they're not thought to be serious. and a police officer from West Yorkshire shared images of the crash and said that although it's only a car, he said he could have cried. Officers were called in to reports of a two-vehicle collision, and part of the motorway was shut as the van and the Lamborghini were moved.
So sad. Well, especially in a place like West Yorkshire on the M1, just not cool. It crashed near Ossett, and we've seen that the West Yorkshire police unit also tweeting that story, and the car, even if it was just hit from behind, it was pretty heavily damaged at one end of the car, and it's just heartbreaking to see that.
And if my car overheats, I go in morning mood. Literally.
Yeah.
I'd be like, I don't know, I'm just all over the place if my car just faces one little glitch. And I can't imagine my car being like, if I drive almost $300,000 car and then it's damaged.
Yeah. We need to play a sad violin for this one.
Oh my God, I don't know what I would feel.
Definitely need to, and it's, I don't know. I mean, for me, it's...
We're very sad this morning.
We're very sad this morning indeed, and especially with the development of the vehicle. Well, I hope it's insured well, because
yes,
having a car like that...
Yeah, it should be insured.
Hashtag could have cried. That's what the West Yorkshire police have posted, so that would be our trending hashtag. And well, we hope that it comes to a swift resolution. Well, stay with us on the Morning Majlis. Lots to discuss and lots to get through, and we'll be right back after the World of Business headlines, courtesy of Emmanuel Majali.
The Morning Majlis, Pulse 95.
Yep, during the conversation with the Morning Majlis, Mr. Rama Dawood, when it comes to entertainment, things are shifting, aren't they?
That's right, Abdul Karim. A cultural shift in the United States amid Black Lives Matter protests, which were sparked by the death of African-American George Floyd in police custody on May 25th. And it has sparked a conversation around the world about what we enjoy watching. And that's in line with that, the show's producers of The Simpsons are saying that they will no longer use white actors for the voice of characters from other ethnic backgrounds. This came amid heavy backlash for Hank Azaria's voiceover of the Indian-American Apu. They said that character was a racial stereotype that perpetuated a negative treatment of Indians in the United States. Azaria himself had left and stepped down from that role, but The Simpsons saying that any role that belongs to other ethnic backgrounds will not be voiced by a white actor.
Yes, and other white U.S. actors to announce that they will no longer be providing voiceovers for people of color include Mike Henry and Kristen Bell. Henry provided the voice of black character Cleveland Brown in the animated series Family Guy for 20 years. He actually tweeted on Friday saying, "I love this character, but persons of color should play characters of color." Also, Bell, who provided the voice of Molly, which is a mixed-race child in the cartoon series Central Park, said doing so displayed, quote, a lack of awareness. She also added by saying that casting a mixed-race character with a white character or white actress undermines the specificity of the mixed race and black American experience.
Certainly is, and it will be very interesting to see how the world of entertainment evolves after this, but a very important move, and it's also about highlighting such a long-standing issue. It's such a stimulus, because obviously the Rights and Equality Acts have been going on for a number of years, but now when it comes to the world of entertainment, when it comes to the world of information, which is consumed at a massive scale, it is a very, very vital role. And Cleveland as a character, many people wouldn't say that it was very demeaning, but to an extent, it was. The role, the character he played itself was very stereotypical as well, wasn't it?
Yeah, absolutely was. And when we talk about changing entertainment for the better and creating more diverse characters and voicing them by the right people, one could think of this as a way to tell new stories from new perspectives. Hank Azaria reflected deeply about his Apu character on The Simpsons, which was supposed to depict the owner of a convenience store of Indian descent. And Azaria said that when he was voicing this role at the time, he did not know any people who were Indian in his entire life, and that he was essentially going off on a stereotype. So with these one-dimensional characters gone, it gives more people time to reflect on who they're voicing, what it says about those communities, and hopefully create multi-dimensional, deep, complex characters, because that is the essence of entertainment, telling complex, moving stories. And with this rise in diversity, hopefully that could be accomplished.
Definitely is, and in terms of how the characters have been played, and particularly the for voiceover actors or even any actor, when they go through drama school, for example, they're actually trained to do different accents, play different roles and play different characters. But when it comes to actors of a particular origin, let's say Arab origin or an Indian ethnicity, they're limited in terms of what different characters they can play. They can either play a migrant or they can play a character from their country.
Exactly.
And that's the set norm, and that needs
stereotype as well.
Stereotype, but visually it's also quite limited. So let's say, for example, Leonardo DiCaprio, we got him playing in Blood Diamond. He played South African, and he put on his accent. Maybe it wasn't the best of all accents, but he clearly passed off as it. So if you ask him to play Zimbabwean, he can. If you ask him to play German, he can. But a person of South Asian or Arab origin, there is limitations.
Right.
And I think this is, and such moves are now opening that horizon. So if an Arab who's purely Palestinian, but he can still play a Palestinian or a Turkish from Germany, it should open those doors, and that's so important, isn't it?
Yeah, that's a big part of the conversation, how people of certain ethnicities are pigeonholed into particular roles. But hopefully we're seeing that go away. I mean, we've seen, for instance, Rami Malek, who's of Arab descent. He played Freddie Mercury in the biopic. So we're seeing more and more leading men of Arab and or other origins from around the world.
Definitely is, and it's something to look forward to and something to discuss. It's an open-ended debate, and if you'd like to have your say in the matter, text lines are open 4215, and we shall be returning right after some musical entertainment, and we'll conclude the show with a bit of sports discussion, and that's the question that we have. And a shout out to Omar Abduri, he would love this question as well. We're asking you, the team that won the Bundesliga is known as Bayern Munich, and we'll be talking about how they won it over the weekend. If you know, our question to you is, what does Bayern mean in German? What does Bayern Munich or Bayern stand for in Bayern Munich? Is it United? Is it Flower, Mountain of Munich? It could be anything. If you know the answer, text lines are open 4215 for you to get involved in the discussions. Stay tuned. This is the Morning Majlis.
You're listening to Pulse 95.
Hi everybody, good morning and welcome back to the Morning Majlis. We're talking sports this segment as the Bundesliga wrapped up, and Bayern Munich rounded it up in style, winning 4-0 against Wolfsburg, and in fact officially now being crowned winners of the league.
Absolutely. The Bavarians, who have matched a club record of 25 matches in all competitions without defeat and are unbeaten in the Bundesliga in 2020, went ahead in the fourth minute with Kingsley Coman netting from Thomas Muller's 21st assist. Now, Michael Cuisance then rifled in from 25 meters for a sensational goal in the 37th, and the 20-year-old Frenchman earned a penalty, which resulted in Joshua being sent off with a second booking. Now, Bundesliga top scorer Robert Lewandowski converted it for his 34th goal of the season.
Well, so much to discuss when it comes to the world of sports, particularly when it comes to Bundesliga doing so, with Bayern Munich doing so well in Bundesliga. Liverpool was another team to win an accolade in another country. They've cemented that title, which is really good to see and hear. But the world of sports is back, which is good news. We're breathing easy now. Apart from some players still being very skeptical about the new plan, Andy Murray spoke out about ATP calendar as well, didn't he? And we've also seen in the world of sports, cricket's going through a little bit of a situation. Pakistani players who tested positive now have to go through another test to be able to play the series in England, but that is still going on. But we're going to be looking at the future of sports in a bit of a brighter note. Man City will give Liverpool guard of honour, as Pep Guardiola has said. But for now, the Morning Majlis will give ourselves a guard of honour as we pave the way for life beats.
Absolutely, we will. We will, and we will return tomorrow at 7 a.m. to discuss all the stories that matter, the stories shaping the headlines, and stay safe. See you next time.
You're listening to Pulse 95.
Pulse 95.
It's the Morning Majlis. Pulse 95.